At one point or another, usually in our teens and maybe even our 20s, we decide to pursue a certain career in life. We start out with great gusto, and then life starts to happen and it presents us with challenges. Depending on our resiliency, we can pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and continue on that journey. Now, sometimes that decision is a good one because we're clear on what it is that we want to achieve. And yet, there are times that time will come when in our lives that where we may not be truly sure of exactly what it is that we want. And so let's face it, the decisions we made in our 20s may no longer serve us as we get older. So as we've come to these crossroads, we must decide, because in that decision lies years of change and growth or staying with more of the same. So committing to change course requires us to really look at how it is that we want to show up as husbands, fathers, and leaders. And today, my guest is going to share with us just how he needed to level his game up to serve himself and his family. But before we get into all that, I just want to remind you that if you're interested in raising the standards that you are as a father and a husband and entrepreneur, then I encourage you to participate in your hero's quest. In this program, you're going to accomplish more, develop more, and become more in the next 90 days than you ever have. You can get more information about this at the Awakened Man Training Academy at members.theawakenedman.net. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan DeMont. So, are you living the highest vision of your life today? And if not, what's preventing you from making that change? As I said earlier, there are crossroads in life. Each one of them will lead us to a different outcome, and yet many of us remain stuck in a job that no longer inspires us, marriages that are barely functional, and dreams that are all but distant memories. Well, today, my guest found himself in a similar situation until he decided to take control of his life. Allow me to introduce my guest. Patrick Tromley has grown up in the mortgage industry and had big goals coming out of college. And when the mortgage meltdown of 2008 hit, his family was upended and forced him to start his career all over. But trouble continued to follow as the next bank he worked at, the FDIC, kicked in the doors and shut them down. Now, Patrick decided he needed to take control of his life. And then as soon as he found himself on the other side of the equation as a real estate investor to support his wife and 3 kids. Now, Patrick's thirst for leveling up led him to seek a mentor who would ultimately change the focus from making money to doing what his conscience told him to do. Now that he was in alignment, Patrick operates as an elite man, husband, father, and leader whose calling is helping thousands of men do the same in their lives. Welcome to the show, Patrick. How are things, my friend?
Can't complain.
Right on. Hey, man, I was really impressed with the work that you're doing. I've been following you on social media, and I just think it's inspiring work for sure. And while I let people know a bit about your history, my first opening question is always about our own hero's journey. So tell us about its particular time in your life when you knew those things had to change, that stuff had to happen. What did you do about that, and how did that experience shape you into the man you are and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so I think really the turning point was after the FDIC came in, and there was a sequential event of the 2008 mortgage crisis, right? The mortgage meltdown, and being kind of hung out to dry with no real plan of what to do next after having reestablished myself. I was looking to take control, right? And be in control and lead my family. And I had done some real estate investing, some flipping before. So I had some experience, and it was no better time than then to go all out and dive into that side of the real estate industry, and just putting in the work, grinding through that, trying to build that business. Hired a mentor who kind of opened my eyes, showed me the ins and outs really of the investing side of the equation. And I'd spent 15 years as a lender on the other side. So I had some familiarity, but there's a lot of differences in the investment side versus the lending side. So he kind of showed me the ropes, helped me get my bearings, let's say, and then really just kind of held my feet to the fire and pushed me to be as good as I could be, and kind of opened my eyes up to the self-development arena. And as I was going in that, trying to make myself better, trying to be a better investor is where it started. And then I kind of went down that path and realized that I needed to get better as a man. And so I actually hired another mentor to help me with the self-development process, help me level up my life, to become more elite, to become the man, and really align with my purpose, right? To find my purpose, because prior to that, I'd always been chasing the dollar. And as I'm sure we all know, when you chase a dollar, that guy runs real fast, and I'm not the fastest guy. So finding my latest mentor was game changing for me. It really opened my eyes, and it brought a sense of peace to me, right? Like, I was always chasing that dollar, and no matter how many times I caught it, it wasn't enough. And really changing my focus and my mindset, shifting to developing myself and really aligning with my purpose, it just changed my life, for lack of a better description. And working on that and further developing myself, the feeling that I have now of being in alignment and working towards becoming more elite, I feel obligated to try and help as many men as possible. The alignment of actually working, right, and working on becoming better, and seeing the effects in your family, seeing the relationships get stronger. My wife and I have always had a great relationship, but I realized that I wasn't supporting her and I wasn't serving her as well as I should have been. And since I've doubled down on that and put her needs along with my kids' needs ahead of myself, everything has changed. Everything has gotten exponentially better. It really is a life-changing thing to get into alignment with your purpose. And for me, my purpose is becoming the best man I can be, becoming the ideal individual, and then giving that guide to my family and to everybody I come in contact with. And really, I think for most guys and most people, really, that is what our true purpose is. Become the source of what you seek, right? For me, I needed to become the stronger leader, father figure. And so that's what I'm working on. It's a daily process. It's a lifetime pursuit. But I think all of us can find purpose in that pursuit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just music to my ears, because that's everything that we're about here at the Awakened Man, is really about guiding men to finding and living their purpose. So I just think it makes so much sense. And then unfortunately, it takes life events that kind of teach us or show us exactly where we're falling off. And so one of the notes I wrote down here is, when you recognize that your second mentor there was guiding you, aligning to find alignment with your purpose, what did you find that was the most out of alignment that you needed to focus on?
I was selfish. I was putting my needs and what I wanted and how I felt ahead of my family. And as soon as I realized that, it wasn't a light bulb, it was a spotlight went off and was like, hey, guy, look over here. This is what you need to be focusing on. And like I said earlier, once I put my family's needs and their wants and their desires ahead of mine, I put myself in the back seat, right? Because I now believe that my job is to serve. And if I'm not doing that, if I'm not operating from a place of servant, being a servant, then I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I brought in some Stoic principles, essentially, and those have really guided my thought process and my mindset in terms of purpose over pleasure, right? Like, my ultimate goal is to serve, to put my purpose ahead of my pleasure, regardless of how I feel. I have stuff that I need to get done. I have roles and responsibilities that need to be handled. And I make sure that happens now, instead of, oh, I don't really want to do this, or I'd rather do that. My feelings honestly are irrelevant, because I have a role to fulfill for each one of my sons and for my wife and for everybody that I come into contact with. So again, the big operating thought or the premise that I use is purpose over pleasure. I always aim to fulfill my purpose versus what I want to do. And a lot of times what I want to do is the right thing, but there are those times where it's, at the end of the day, let's say, and I have a 6-year-old, my youngest, he wants to go to the park, and, I've been on client calls all day and doing all different things, whatever it might be. And you're kind of tired at the end of the day. But as soon as I hang up the last call, he's knocking on my office door. Hey, Dad, let's go to the park. And inside, sometimes you're like, oh man, I'd just kind of like to hang out for a few minutes. And previously I'd be like, nah, we'll go tomorrow. But now it's absolutely, let's go, grab your shoes, hurry up, let's get there before the sun goes down. And the joy and happiness you see on his face when I'm like, yeah, let's go. That's what gives me my pleasure now, is seeing the joy and the pleasure of my tribe when I'm doing what I should be doing. And that just reconfirms that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for clarifying and giving us an example, because I think up until that point, there might have been there might have been some confusion for our listeners to understand what you're meaning by purpose over pleasure. It's not that you don't ever allow yourself to enjoy life. It's about those moments, those key moments, and think how many times as fathers, not mine, my children are in their late 20s and early 30s. And so I think back of those moments and how many times that I did exactly what you said before recognizing that I was being selfish, right? And saying, yeah, you know what, we'll do it. We'll do it. We'll do it tomorrow. And being a part-time dad at the time, we were split from their mom. The challenge with doing that, we don't recognize that in the moment until many years later. And so, being able to recognize the impact of that right away, says a lot. And so it also helps provide that clarity on the difference between what does true selfishness look like versus what does servant leadership look like. And that was just a beautiful way to put it.
It definitely, like I said, I see the impact of when I make the right choices, and it's instantaneous. With my wife as well, right? I would allow her to fulfill some of my role or some of my responsibilities as husband, as leader of the family previously. And honestly, I think there's a lot of guys that do that, right? We abdicate part of our role or some of our responsibilities because we know our wife's going to step up, because somebody has to do it. And if it's not going to be us, it's not going to be our kids, right? They're not old enough or mature enough yet to understand. So it falls back on our wives. And I think now that I've had this coming to God moment and this revelation, we have to step up. We have to be that leader, because it's going to breed resentment at the worst case. Your wife is going to start resenting you because you're putting your work off on her.
Yeah. And
she's already got all the stuff that she's supposed to do as the wife, the mom. And, for me, the house manager, right? She runs the house, makes sure everything's in tip top shape and everybody has everything they need. And then so for me to throw additional work on top of her, I don't know of a more perfect example of being selfish. And so once I really had the wool pulled back and my eyes were opened, that's not a thing anymore. I don't allow that. I don't allow myself that leeway or that convenience of, well, she'll handle it. That's just not, I think that's sad that I was doing that. Honestly, it was a complete abdication and just being selfish. Like I said, I mean, there's no excuse, right? And I'm sure we all do it, but what the important part is recognizing it and then working continuously to not do that anymore, to serve and to be there and really anticipate the needs so that you can take even more work off of her plate, right? And serve her better so that she can have freedom, so she can have time to do what it is that she wants to do instead of just having to do all the stuff that she has to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And the word that comes to mind, and for me in that, is that I replace selfishness in that scenario with taking my family, my wife, for granted.
Absolutely.
And it took me to lose a marriage to recognize that was the things that I was doing, and almost losing this current one before it really sunk in. And I think that's a challenge for us guys, is that we recognize that we're busy. We're running businesses. Maybe we've got two things on the go. You got a regular job and a side hustle, and you got other things going on. But we forget that our wives are busy as well, and how we show up when we walk through that door. And at the end of our day, whether that's coming out of the door of your home office or coming from outside of the home, really sets the stage for what the temperature of the house is going to be. And I think, as you're really showing us how that when we're conscious and we pay attention to what's going on around us, then we can be much more present for our family and our kids.
Exactly. It's not complicated. It is work, right? But it's not complicated. It's simple work that a lot of times we don't want to do. And then you're going to suffer the consequences, right? Your kids are going to act up. Your wife's not going to be happy with you. There's all kinds of stuff that you're going to deal with.
Yeah.
Where if you just make the simple decision, this is what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to get this done.
Yeah.
The benefits are indescribable, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody, there's a sense of calmness, joy. People are happy to see you. You're just in alignment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and you're also showing for me, I have 3 sons, right? So I'm showing, I have to be cognizant of the relationship and the way I interact with my wife, not only because she deserves the respect and a certain level of me performing for her, but I have 3 future men that are going to base their relationship with their wife based on how I act with mine.
Yep,
so not only would I am affecting their lives, but potential wives and their children as well. So there's a lot of responsibility, but it is very fruitful when you put the correct effort into the correct things, and to see them, because I see them watching me. I'll come up behind my wife, I'll give her a hug, kiss her on the neck, and I see them, they're watching me all the time. And I just did my youngest, he likes to do burpees with me. We do an afternoon short little workout, push-ups and burpees, and he gets out there and he's 1, 2. He does them faster than I can do them. And it's just another example of like, they're always watching us. So we have to be that example. And you can't just talk the talk, right? You have to show them through your actions. The words are cheap and easy. The work is where, and the actions are where the money is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. At some point in your transition, though, there must have been some low times, right? Where your self-confidence really wasn't there. Tell us a little bit about what you did to help get yourself out of that space and get yourself into a more healthy mindset.
Yeah, it was rough there. So after I landed at the bank where the FDIC came in, the first year there, I only made, I want to say it was like $35,000. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, I was the breadwinner, was doing well, not super well, but I was mid 6 figures. So we were doing all right. And then that next year, 35,000, I couldn't support myself. I had to rely on my wife to be the breadwinner. And that was extremely humbling. Mm-hmm. That was a punch to the gut, where I thought I was this big, bad dude that, was kicking ass in life, and had a piece of humble pie there real quick. And in order to get through that, I just kept going. I didn't stop. And I leaned on my mentor at the time, because I started a new industry after that, or not new industry, but a new side of the industry. And his expertise, along with my essentially grit to not quit, is what was able to get me through it. The mindset portion was huge. And it was, at the end of the day, I have a role and responsibility. I know I keep saying that, but that's kind of how I operate. I have a role as the husband and father. I need to lead this family. One of the main things, or the 3 main things that I say for my guys that I coach, a man's supposed to provide, protect, and preside. And if you're not doing those 3 things, you're failing as a husband and a father. So I wasn't able to provide at that point. So I felt like a failure. I felt that I wasn't performing one of my main 3 duties to my wife and to the time I had 2 sons, to my 2 boys. And it ate at me bad. It was a dark period there for a little bit. But at the end of the day, I knew I can't lose if I don't quit. So I just kept going until it popped. And I probably wrote I want to say it was like 423 offers before I got my first offer accepted. So it was, wow, it was depressing, to say the least. I just kept getting no. And then finally it was like, yes. And I jumped up out of my chair, like, we got it. Right. And then from there, it started to trickle in a little bit more and more. And it was dark there for a little bit, though. The constant no, and just the feeling of being a failure and not providing was hard. But as long as you don't quit, you're not going to lose, right? So that was the premise that I operated under, and we ended up turning the corner and being in a much better spot.
Well, and kudos to you for the resilience, right? How many of us would have quit after the 5th excuse me, the fifth, the no, let alone 400. What'd you say? 23?
23.
Like that's just phenomenal, my friend. Just to, because you're in the right spot. It's just like you said, you can't lose unless you quit, and just need to persevere and keep moving forward. And then you were able to do that, right? And it really helped change and really gave you that strong, unbreakable mindset that I know that you talk about as well with your
It
guys.
did.
And so,
It
when you
did.
can,
Yeah,
when you can do that, right?
it was, there were a few times where I thought about quitting and going and getting just a regular job, right? Like after the first 100, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. But my mentor was like, no, just keep going. It took me, I forget however many he was in the couple hundred too before he got his first deal. He goes, you're not even halfway there yet. Just keep going. I'm like, oh man, all right.
Well,
And
and that's a great point, right? Because just it doesn't mean that you don't want to quit. You don't feel like wanting to quit. We're all going to go through that. But if you have the resilience, perseverance, and the key that I'm also picking up here, Patrick, is that you leaned on a mentor, you leaned on someone to help pull you through, and so that kind of leads me into the work that you're doing with Level Up Dad. Talk a little bit about that and how that's and the work that you're doing around that and how that's changing men's lives.
Sure. So really what I do is I'm a mindset coach. It's a performance or mindset coach, right? Because mindset determines everything, how you perform it, from athletics to being a dad, to being a father, to being a businessman, an entrepreneur. I leverage Stoic principles with nutrition or macro manipulation and physical training to build the mindset. So by forcing yourself to adhere to blueprints that I've created, it builds the discipline that we need in order to essentially grind it out wherever we need to. I mentioned earlier that I operate under the purpose over pleasure, and that's a base principle of Stoicism. And once you have that, you combine it with the nutrition aspect of, I'm going to follow this diet plan. I'm not going to cheat. I know it sucks at times. I know it's hard. But at the end of the day, I have that guy at the end of the line that I'm working towards. I'm working towards that elite individual, that ideal individual. And in order to get there, I have to go through this. I have to do this because that guy at the end is the man that I want to be. So you go through that. And it's the same thing with the training. I use weight training. It can be any kind of physical activity, really where you're pushing yourself, right? And you're stressing yourself, the physical aspect of it. When you combine those three and you adhere to the blueprints, that mindset that you build it's unbreakable. There's nothing that you can't overcome when you go through that stuff. When you leverage the Stoicism, that always reminds me, like I said earlier in the example, I have a job to do, and there's nothing that's going to deter me from that. So when you apply that to the nutrition, I have a job to do. I have to hit these macros. I can't eat these things. I can have some of that, but I can't have that. It's that same thing. My purpose is to build this kind of individual. Yeah. And the training is the same way, right? We're putting ourselves through the hard stuff. Stoics call it stress inoculation. Mm-hmm. We're inoculating ourselves to the stresses of life by physically beating ourselves up, really, right? We're putting ourselves through this hard physical work so that when we encounter the life's hard situations or the twists and turns, it's something that we can easily overcome. We've already gone through the hard stuff. We put ourselves through hard situations. Nutrition, especially when it comes to the nutrition, and I'm starting a new nutrition plan for myself where it includes a lot of fasting. And so the fasting is very different for me, and it's difficult. And if you look back at the history of humans, a lot of people, when they wanted to essentially elevate their emotional frequency, their vibe, for lack of a better term, they will go through fasting and they will do long physical treks, right? They will go on a pilgrimage and they will fast. So this is kind of the same kind of thing. It helps build that mindset. It helps level up your frequency, your vibe, so that you are operating at the highest frequency possible. And all of us should be aiming to operate in that frequency of love, because there's nothing above that, right? When we're operating out of love, we are spreading that to everybody else. We attract the good stuff. We attract people that we can help. And for me, it falls back to that being a servant, right? So if I'm operating at the highest vibe I can, I'm bringing people to me that I can help. And when I can help them, the impact not only affects their life, but their wife, their kids, their grandkids, the people that they work with, their employees, if they're an entrepreneur. You can just see the waterfall effect as they go through the process and they feel the love coming from me because I'm pouring into them everything that I can to help them be successful, to help them improve their marriage, to help them create their ideal individual. And then once they feel that and they start to walk down that path, you see the light bulb go off and you see the mindset change. And then from that point forward, I just encourage a little bit and give them bits and pieces here and there where they're lacking. And I get pictures from my clients or videos from my clients of them walking or going on a walk with their dog and their kids, which they hadn't done in 6 months. And you see the kids turning and looking at the dad, just like, having such a great time. And that for me is what it's all about. The first one I got of those, it brought a tear to my eye. It made me emotional over it because of the impact on the kids. And that to me is what it's all about. You and I we are what we are, right? We're always going to work to be elite, but those kids are so formative still. They're still in their formative years where what we do is going to directly affect them and how they view themselves, their self-confidence, the level of life that they strive for. It all comes back to us and it starts with us. So if we are not pouring everything into them and showing them, like I said, and leading them by example, you're affecting not only them, but their kids and their wife and everything that I mentioned before. Yeah. So there is a high level of responsibility that I feel with my clients because most of them are married and most of them do have kids. So I am there to not only serve them, but to hopefully have a positive effect on their kids and their wives.
Absolutely. It is truly generational work that you're doing, because how that model, and they recognize that and they see it through those formative years. They get a clear picture of what it means to be a man, to how to treat women, how to show up. And I think that's such a key message of what you're putting down here right now. So I love that.
Exactly.
You also talked a little bit about in your work too, that some marriages are going to go through I would suggest that probably all of our marriages will go through a season when maybe that attraction level to our spouses, to us really, this isn't what it used to be. So what do you recommend for men to do about getting their wives to be more attracted to them?
Serve them. When you serve them and you do little acts of kindness, little things that take maybe 30 seconds, I have a thing where I will in the morning, because I get up before my wife, I have a little sticky yellow pad on my desk here, and I'll just write her a little note and I'll stick it on the bathroom mirror so that when she walks in there in the morning, she sees either, I did one today, happened to be today. It's like, hey, I'm so proud to call you my wife. I love everything that you do for our family. Kick today's ass. Simple little note like that. And she comes in, first thing, it's a big hug and a kiss, right? Like it's little things that show that we're actually thinking about them, show that we care and we're there to serve them. That, and then in combination with doing your job, fulfill your roles and responsibilities. You do those two things, she won't keep her hands off you. I guarantee that. She feels, in those circumstances, she feels like she's loved. She feels like you're there as a partner to help her, right? You're not her other kid that she has to take care of. And I think a lot of guys, me included, kind of fell into that role of, well, she's going to take care of it, right? And it was me at that time too, especially when I wasn't making enough money to support the family. It adds that extra work to her plate. So if we can take that stuff off by doing simply just what we're supposed to do, it's a game changer. It really is. And the more you work on yourself and try and be the best version of yourself, and give that person to her, like I say, create the ideal individual and then give that person to your people in the world, you're going to see her relationship and the way she looks at you, it's going to change for the better.
Absolutely, because she no longer sees you as a child. Right. We're no longer acting as children, right? And some of that challenges is that we still have a hard time separating from that mom idea. And we're doing tons of work on that right now with in the Awakened Man. You talked about your getting into self-development and doing that work. Let me ask you, what book's on your nightstand now?
Well, I am actually reading, I have it right here, Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. That one, to me, it's kind of that's an intense one. I really like that one. I do like some of the Epictetus writings. He's got good stuff. Marcus Aurelius has great ideas, but for me, the way that's written is it's work to read. And I read in the morning when I get up. So I'm not trying to get into that much mental gymnastics right away. But again, he's one of the base, not founders, but one of the true stoics that everybody leans on. So the ideas are good. So if you're reading later in the day, after you've had a chance to wake up, I would definitely recommend that one. But Outwitting the Devil is what I'm reading right now. And then there's a good book by my mentor, Wes Watson. It's called Non-Negotiable. And it's really just his story about how he did his time, his 10-year sentence in state penitentiary. And that is what allowed him to create his mindset and to become the high level performer that he is. I think he's been out about 5 years and he's a multimillionaire. He is the thought leader right now, in my opinion, of mindset development and personal development in the US. So those 3 books, Outwitting the Devil, the Marcus Aurelius, I'm drawing a blank on the name right now. It's the Meditations.
Yeah.
And then Wes Watson, Non-Negotiable, are probably the top 3 that I would recommend right now.
Right on. Love it. I hadn't read, I think I read one book by the time I got to the age of 30. And then when my life started to shift at that stage, I've just been an incessant reader, and some of the stuff I like to read sitting behind me, the things I like to pull back, and just so happens that there it is right there. Meditations.
Yeah.
Waiting for
yep.
to come up, because I think it's a never ending journey of our unfoldment as we continue to push forward. So love to hear you're doing that. So let's think, Patrick, 20 years from now, your kids, are 20 years older. They've come back, they're sitting in your home, sitting around the dinner table. What would legacy look like for you?
Well, that's a good one. Well, the fact that they come back and sit at my dinner table with their families, that is extremely important to me.
Nice.
That means that I did my job in terms of leading the family and showing them how to be the man that they're supposed to be. I did it from a place of love, which is why they've come back, instead of a place of disdain or disgust. Like, you guys are screwing up, you need to do. No, that's not at all how it should be approached. If they come back and they bring their families back, then I know that they felt the love, even in the corrective situations where they do need to be steered back onto course. They knew that it was because it was the right thing to do, because I was there to love them so that they could have and become the people that they're supposed to be, become the men that they're supposed to be. So that, to me, I think by them just showing up with their families, that to me is a solid legacy. And combine that with them being solid men that are doing as I preach, right? That they're fulfilling their roles and responsibilities, that they are servant leaders of their families, that they are ideal individuals, and everybody's going to have their own ideal individual, but that they are fulfilling that role in their life for their tribe and everybody that they interact with. If I can have those 3 go out and be solid men like that, I think my legacy is pretty solid at that point.
Yeah, what a great legacy as well, Patrick. That's just phenomenal, and just know that the work you're doing, for sure, that's a definite outcome. Of everything that we spoke about today, and maybe there was something we didn't get an opportunity to touch on, what would be a takeaway you'd want our listeners to have?
I think we covered the meat and potatoes of my point of view, or my approach to life: purpose over pleasure, servant leader, and lead by example. I mean, those are the three important things that I always fall back on. And then as a man, you have to provide, protect, and preside over your family. If you're not doing those 3, you're dropping the ball. And if you're dropping the ball, you need to pick it up fast, because the time with your kids goes so quick. My oldest turns 12 in a week or so, and I am almost looking him eye to eye now. He's 5'9", and about a year ago he was 5'6", still looking like a little boy. Now he's got a little dirt growing on his lip.
Right.
And
on.
it's crazy how fast that time goes. So if you are dropping that ball, don't let it be on the ground for long. Pick it back up. There's always time. And I'm not perfect by any means. I screw up all the time, but I work as quickly and diligently as possible to get back in alignment, to make sure that I'm coming from a place of love, and that they understand that everything I'm doing is because I love them. So
yeah. Love that. Yeah. That is so awesome. Right on. Well, but I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today. And, you've laid some groundwork for men to be able to actually come up and level up as fathers, husbands and entrepreneurs or anything else that they aspire to become. And such so greatly needed. And I think it's important that we have different voices in this sphere of men's work that people can get it attached to, it can resonate with. And you've got an outstanding story. You're doing some amazing work. So if men were interested in getting a hold of you and participating in your program, what's the best way for them to do that?
Instagram. I'm on Instagram at the Level Up Dad. I post my daily routines there, my morning routine, which is the most important thing to me so that I am the most elite version of myself. I post that daily. And then on the main page, I post more of my philosophy, my interactions with my kids, how I'm teaching them. That kind of stuff goes on the main page. But follow me on Instagram. That's where I communicate with everybody and really just kind of, I try to inspire and show what I do. Not that I'm perfect, but that I can be an example of what can be done. And people can do it better too. Hopefully they see what I do and take it to the next level. That would be the epitome of what I'm trying to do here.
I love that. Well, I'm going to make sure that's in the show notes so folks can get opportunity to reach out and get a hold of you and participate in your work. Like I said, you're doing some phenomenal stuff. So once again, Patrick, thank you so much for being on the show. It was an awesome conversation today.
I thank you so much for having me on. I had a great time.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.